Tonight, ECG has 48 hours to produce load management timetable by order of the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission, but Energy Minister is already dismissing the need for one.
Have you heard of calls for a timetable?
Ask those who want it to bring it. If there is, I haven't seen any timetable. What do you mean? The ECG says that there's no timetable coming. Why do you want to bring a timetable? What purpose?
We have the latest as the ECG faces a race against time to comply with PURC directives, one of which just expired at 5 p.m. today with risk of sanctions.
This is Top Story with Evans Mensah.
The raging feud between the Electricity Company of Ghana, ECG, and the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission, PURC, will linger a while longer. The ECG, as of tonight, has only 48 hours to produce a load management timetable by order of the PURC. The subject of a load management timetable has been a central demand for consumers, especially industries, in the wake of the recent erratic supply of electricity. The ECG had set the recurring blackouts due to overloaded transformers, 630 of them across the country. Now listen to the ECG Managing Director, Samuel Dubik Mahama.
Most of the time, most of the problems that we are having to do with certain particular transformers have to do with underground cables. So we are just asking for everybody's patience. These are things that do happen, and we are managing the situation. As soon as it's done, we will let everybody know.
Well, ECG now has 48-hour ultimatum issued by the PURC for it to produce a load management timetable to govern the transformer repairs and assist consumers plan their lives. We are also hearing from the Energy Minister, Martin Poku-Prempeh, who has been dismissing the need for a timetable despite the erratic power supply. We have more from him pretty shortly, but my colleague with the Energy Desk joins me in the studio right now, Kojo Brace. There is a lot to go through on this raging subject of this feud between the PURC and the ECG. But let's start with the directive as we know it, as it relates to the load management timetable. A very controversial phrase indeed in our electricity supply and energy lexicon.
Now, if you look at the order from the PRC, it says, in respect of outages attributed to ECG to 630 overloaded transformers during peak hours, A, ratings and current loadings of the overloaded distribution transformers. That's what ECG has to produce or provide the PRC. B, GPS location of all overloaded distribution transformers. C, ratings of the new transformers to be installed in each location. D, timelines and duration for injection of transformers for each location. E, load management timetable corresponding with the timelines and duration for each transformer injection. And F, evidence of publication of 2.3E above to consumers.
Okay, so not only give the PURC a load management timetable corresponding to the repairs you're doing, but also give the PURC evidence that you shared that load management timetable with the consumers.
Yeah.
They have a timeline for this.
Exactly. Now, if you look at a timeline, it says that ECG shall comply with Order 2.2D, Order 2.3E, and Order 2.3F by close of day March 27, 2024.
This is Wednesday.
Yes.
This is Wednesday.
Tomorrow, Wednesday.
Okay. That's a day after tomorrow.
Tomorrow, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they have 48 hours to do this. Now, the subject of a load management timetable is controversial. We'll hear from the Energy Minister pretty shortly. But if you go to the ECG website, they detail the 630 transformers in question. That's the first time they mentioned this. And then they ask consumers to expect blackouts around 7 to 11 p.m. This was 2 weeks ago on the 11th of March when they published this on their website. If you check there again, you realize that they've actually gone further to that initial announcement and also provided specific locations
Yes.
for where you have the faulty transformers. If you come, and this is by region, so they've broken it down by region. If you go to the Greater Accra, for example, the Accra East region, you have Abokobi, so Abokobi Dodowa district. You have the Adenta new site near Mrs. Mary Bodoji's residence.
So that's
Adenta
the
location
in Adenta where that particular 40 transformer is.
Okay. And because, again, if you look at the directives that had been issued to the ECG, it includes GPS location of all overloaded distribution transformers. This doesn't have the GPS locations attached, but it tells you exactly where you can find them across the regions of this country. So that is there. What we don't have, or I haven't seen yet, is this load management timetable, right?
Which is something that the PURC is asking ECG to provide.
Yes.
That specifically timelines and duration for injection of transformers for each location. And to the load management, it says load management timetable corresponding with the timelines and duration for each transformer injection. But we don't see that on the website. On
the subject of the timetable, though, the energy minister was asked this question by my colleagues at Love FM, and he gave this reaction.
You do admit that there's doomsaw.
That is the word you used. I have never used that word. I've promised you that we are going to work on it. And it's not a work that is a single event. It's a process. And we'll continue to work on it for the energy sector to become better.
Have you heard of calls for a timetable?
Ask those who want it to bring it. If there is, I haven't seen any timetable. So when
people are calling for it.
Say bring a timetable. What do you mean? The ECG says that there's no timetable coming. Why do you want to bring a timetable? What purpose? Why would somebody get up and wish evil or bad for the country? When it is not planned, you can't tell the person.
So that is the energy minister there, dismissing the question when it was asked about the timetable and the calls for it. He says, why are you asking for the timetable? The ECG says there isn't a timetable, so he's not expecting that to happen. What do you make of that? That's the energy minister responding there. But of course, let's put it in context. This directive by the PURC predated this interview he granted us over the weekend. And so either he ought to have known that the ECG had asked for that load management timetable, or he should have been briefed about it by his own advisors as far as this is concerned. But that is his reaction. We'll get some reactions to what we've just heard there from the energy minister pretty shortly.
He's the head of the sector. All of the decisions that PURC takes, I'm sure he's briefed on that. And this is quite critical. So he should have known that the PURC, which is the regulator of the sector, is asking ECG to provide a timetable. So now it's moved from probably in his mind, his opponent who are asking for. Now it is the regulator who says you need to provide consumers with a timetable. So he should have known.
Talking about the PURC directives to the ECG, we just talked about the 48-hour ultimatum now that would expire on Wednesday when it comes to the load management timetable. But some of the other directives have already expired. In fact, some expired. One in particular expired at 5 p.m.
So the one says, let's look at that order, but let's give the time frame first. It says ECG shall comply with order 1 above by March 25, 2024, which is today. So what is this order? Now, the order 1 says, to comply with the CWM, which is the cash waterfall mechanism, and pay all tariff revenues as prescribed and allocated under the cash waterfall mechanism to secure the financial integrity of the sector. Because we know that all the issues that started coming up about not having enough power generated by the IPPs and all of that had to do with the non-payment by ECG to the cash waterfall mechanism. I mean, last year we did a lot of stories here that companies like VRA, Gradeco were suffering from even paying for some materials that they had taken from suppliers because they were not being paid by ECG. So the PRC said, make sure that you provide all the tariff revenues as prescribed and allocated under the cash waterfall mechanism to ensure that financial integrity of the sector is maintained. And the timeline was today, 5 p.m., as you said.
And we've been checking to check if indeed the ECG has complied. We'll try and update you pretty shortly. But there are sanctions for the ECG if they fail to meet the deadlines.
Now, it says that a public utility with which G fails or refuses to prepare and submit to the Commission within a specified time provided by or under this Act a return or an information required to be furnished by or under this Act, or 2, directed to be furnished by the board for the purpose of the performance of its functions, or J, fails or refuses to answer a question relevant to a matter which is in the subject of an investigation before the commission, commits an offence, and is liable on summary conviction to a fine not exceeding 500 penalty unit, and in default of payment, the principal officer, in this case the MD, or the secretary of the public utility, is liable to a term of imprisonment not exceeding 2 years. So, Evans, that is the thing there. Now, sanctions against public utility says, where a public utility contravenes a provision of these regulations or directive or order of the commission, the commission may impose a regulatory charge on that public utility as specified in the schedule.
I see. So it includes imprisonment if they fail.
Yeah.
And so the countdown is on. We need to check if indeed they've complied with that directive that expired at 5 p.m. close of day today. And then they have 48 hours to produce that load management timetable. And I know businesses have been looking forward to that. The AG had asked for it. Ordinary citizens have asked for it too. Minister says, listen, he outrightly dismissed it. I want to bring in the ranking on the Energy Committee in Parliament. As you know, they have already indicated that they're going to bring the minister before them to answer a few questions around the recent erratic power supply. John Junapo joins me. He's a ranking member of that committee. Mr. Junapo, thank you for your time here on Top Story. So the subject of a load management timetable is one that the PURC itself had included in its directives last week. It expires on Wednesday, but the minister is very clear on this matter that there's no need for one.
First of all, I'm very, very surprised, even at the PURC directive, because the main problem is generation. It has nothing to do with so-called transformers. So I thought that the PURC would have done this investigation and indeed determine that there's a generation shortfall. If there's a generation shortfall, the outage occurs at the bulk supply point controlled by Gridco. So Gridco would have to then inform ECG which bulk supply point will go off. Then ECG would inform its customers. As we speak, there's a deficit in terms of generation. And until that is resolved, we'll continue to have the load shedding we are experiencing. Be that as it may, it is my hope that on Wednesday, the ECG would comply with the directive of the regulator, because under Act 538, the PURC has the mandate and authority to give such directives. I'm very shocked and surprised that the minister would give such contradictory and counter instructions. He should know better that we are shedding load. And even in his interview, he couldn't refute it. He said, yes, they are shedding load, but in his opinion, it's better than President Mohammed's time. And so what? That's the question. And so what? Let's assume it's better. And so what? People should not be given a timetable to plan because in the minister's opinion, it is better. If you admit there is load shedding, give the people the timetable to plan. And when the people request that the outages are getting too many, give us the timetable to plan. The minister says that those who are asking for the timetable should go and prepare the timetable themselves. Extremely unfortunate. Very insulting.
Is it fair to assume that he possibly didn't know that the PURC has officially requested for this, beyond what ordinary citizens are requesting for?
Citizens shouldn't even request for that. He should be directing ECG to do that. That is his duty as minister. That when you are convinced that there is load shedding, it's the duty, he has a fiduciary duty to the people of Ghana to ensure that they are told in advance. As I speak, I have power outages here. I do not have electricity. And it's because of a generation problem. They know. It's not like it's intermittent. They don't have money to buy fuel. And until they procure the fuel, we'll continue to have this load shedding. So it has nothing to do with overloading or emergency. They simply are not giving ECG enough power. And if ECG doesn't have enough power, there will be a deficit. Let's deal with that. But if you can't deal with the fuel situation, inform the people of Ghana to plan.
Well, on the subject of the real reason for the erratic power supply, though, I mean, ECG had maintained that it's because of the faulty transformers. In fact, if you look at the website now, they have given details as to where you can find these transformers that are down. There's 630 of them across the country, and they are very, very specific, the locations where they are. That is incontrovertible evidence. You can verify that yourself if you doubt it.
That is one leg. But I'm saying there's a generation problem. And so even if ECG's transformers were up and running, they cannot supply the power. So I thought what they would have done, assuming what they are saying is true, is to work with Gridco. So that when they put the whole area or sector off, they can do whatever maintenance they want to do. But is there a generation problem or not? You can verify that indeed there's a generation problem. And once you have a deficit in generation, you engage in what you call load shedding because the demand is above your supply. That is a fact. And I was surprised that the ECG MD went into this array of transformers and all that. He brought a problem to himself. He knows that he's not getting enough power from Gridco. And that is a fact. So let's deal with that. If there's a fuel challenge, let's all agree as a nation, how do we deal with the fuel challenge? Until you address that, the issue of transformers doesn't even come in. Because you don't even have the power, let alone supply that power.
Stay with me, Mr. Junapa. I want to bring in Nana Mwesi, who is Executive Director of the Institute for Energy Security. And I want to start with you on, because civil society, everybody asked for this load management timetable that we now know is part of the set of directives issued by the PURC. But the Minister has a position on this. We know that the PURC is not an agency under the Ministry of Energy. But if that's the Minister's position, invariably, that will be what the ECG's position will be. In fact, the Minister refers to the ECG saying we don't need one. Hello, Nana.
Hello, Evans.
Yes. What do you stand on that question of the load management timetable? Is it fair to ask for one now, considering the challenge that the ECG says they have with the transformers?
Thanks for having me, Evans, and good evening to your listeners. A timetable or a load shedding table is a right to a consumer, and it's not something that the ECG or the minister will choose and pick as to when we require one or not. After all, they agreed that they will supply us power. That's why I have a meter in my home. I pay for this power, in my own home. I pay before I even consume. It's prepaid. So I have my money with you, and you're not giving me the power. And you can't tell me when I will have my power. Today, when we listen to the minister, it is clear that the ECG's boss refusal to check out the timetable, is fully backed by the minister. And if the PRC acts an agency under your oversight, and you say that Ghanaians, whoever wants a timetable can turn out one. This is quite insulting, very insulting. And to give us the posture that you are unaware that the PRC have required of an agency of yours to submit some details of their own discussion means that this is an uninformed minister. And so a timetable is a right that Ghanaians must enjoy so we can plan our life. It's not something they choose and pick. You know that your load, the load on your system is far above what you can give to your customers and the consumers. You only have to plan so that you don't have a blackout or a brownout, and tell the people that can have the power at any particular point in time and those who cannot have it. It's been done. Why are we hiding data? Why are we choosing to, deprive Ghanaians of something that they have a right to?
If you read the earlier ECG announcement on the challenges we're facing, this is as of 11th of March, they indicate that you can expect blackouts between 7 p.m. and 11 p.m. Isn't that enough?
Because you are repairing and you revamping your distribution system. Do you work in the night? How many ECG workers do we find in the night working on transformers? It's a whole excuse that somebody chose to be a King Kong and try to defend a situation that's indefensible.
It is 7 to 11, they explain, because that's the peak load period.
Of course, it's a peak hour. But you are telling me that I should respect those blackouts because you have 630 transformers overloaded. Tell me that the power inherited from GRIDCO, the system operator, is far lower than the load that I need to manage. So I will shed off some power. This is what you need to tell Ghanaians. After you don't produce the power, you don't transmit the power. You inherit the power from GRIDCO. And so for any particular moment, you know how much you are getting from GRIDCO. And as a distributor, you look at the load, whether it's peak hour or not. And like John is saying, from the beginning of the year up to now, the whole system has not been able to churn power in excess of 3,300 megawatts. Meanwhile, our system peak demand is about 3,680 megawatts. So there's a shortfall. That shortfall must be managed through load shedding. And so that's why we know that there's load shedding, but give us a timetable so we plan our life. And even know something here. While we are battling with this situation, VRA is prioritizing supplying power to our neighbors, which is hurting the system.
The IPPs have raised this. The VRA has also come back with a counter that the picture is not exactly what the IPPs are painting, and that they are only meeting their contractual obligations.
Even we have the conditions, system conditions sheet every day. We see how much power is being churned out and how much is going to Burkina, how much is going to Togo. We monitor it on daily basis. And we even believe that the system must be audited. Our suspicion is that they are giving them more power than what is even placed on the sheet. And that requires an audit. And so we ask the PRC to also audit how much is being pushed to our neighbors. I think that Ghanaians must be given the first right of this power. You give to our neighbors your own power that you produce and sell to them at 7 cents per kilowatt. Meanwhile, we are paying close to 14 cents as Ghanaians. So Ghanaians have the right to that power, and VRA must prioritize the power from their source to the direction of the Ghanaian, not our neighbors.
But VRA is clear that they have a contractual obligation, and this contractual obligation that existed since 1972, and they're simply meeting that obligation.
Equally, they have a contractual, arrangement with us as Ghanaians. When you don't have much power, you deal with your people first before you look out. Sometimes, we even know that the end guard, they reduce when they know that Nigeria is not having enough. They choose to give us what they can give. And so that contract is there, all right. But whose interest are you serving? That of the Ghanaian or our neighbors? I think we come first.
I mean, stay with me on this. I want to bring in Mr. Jinapo. Mr. Jinapo, on the subject of the load management timetable, I bring that up obviously because it's important to our audiences and who are also consumers of ECG because they need that to plan. Now that we know the minister's position, do you still expect the PURC to stand its ground and crack the whip if they don't get it by Wednesday? And even if they do get it by Wednesday, the last directive says the ECG must also prove and supply evidence that they had shared that already with their consumers. Do you expect sanctions?
First of all, let's assume you want to put my transformer off today, Monday, 7 to 11 as is being touted. Don't you think I need to know? This is common logic.
Yeah, but they've told you. I mean, they've already said 7 to 11, and they told you
every day.
Where this
Which day? Effect. Because you don't switch all the transformers off, 600 transformers off. Then the whole nation will be in darkness. So if you want to do a regular maintenance on a particular transformer in a particular year, at least put it on your website, even if you won't publish. That is Legon, we would be working on, say, this area from this time to that time. I mean, that's not rocket science. But you see, during the State of the Nation address, even this is important, the president boasted that the power situation was very stable. All this is because they cannot go against the president. When they do that, it will expose the president. The truth is they are shedding load, there's a deficit, demand outstrips supply. So no matter what ECG does, even if you give ECG all the transformers, they simply do not have the power to supply. It's because of a financial challenge. Check with Gridco. They've had to go for an overdraft to pay their workers. The system is financially bankrupt. The energy sector debt is exceeded 1.5 billion. The Ministry of Finance since August has not been able to pay even 1 CD for power consumed by government agencies, and this is captured by the PURC. But I'll be very, very surprised if ECG heeds to the directive. This is not an advice, to a directive from the PURC, which they ought to, because the minister, just like the president did, once has come to say that we should go and publish our own timetable, and that they wouldn't publish a timetable. Ghanaians should not expect the ECG to abide by the instructions of the PURC. But all this still comes to leadership.
I mean, you say that you expect the ECG to go the way the minister indicated and not comply with the directive.
Because the minister has so much political power.
But there's sanctions. The ECG, the
PURC can only give them sanctions to pay penalties. The minister can fire the ECG boss. The PURC cannot fire the ECG boss. But like I'm saying, you know this. Don't we have higher authority? What is the presidency doing? What is the head of the economic management team doing? Parliament invited them. We waited for them. They did not come. They did not appear. They didn't even have the courtesy to call the chairman to inform the chairman. So we might have to use parliamentary processes. And you and I know how frustrating it can be on the floor of Parliament.
Who did you invite specifically? The minister?
We invited the ministry, ECG, Gridco, almost all the industry players. They did not appear.
Not even one?
Not even one. Not even the courtesy of informing us that we are unable to come. Because, once again, and this is important, when they appear before a parliamentary subcommittee, they will be under oath. And they can deceive you, they can lie to you. But when they appear before our committee, and they churn out false information, it means that they will be facing perjury. So they wouldn't even come.
Nana Moesi, a quick word to you finally. On the subject of the load management timetable, you've heard Jinapo make the point that now that we've had a minister, he doesn't expect that the ECG will comply with the PURC's directive. Is that your expectation too? And do you expect the PURC to impose the sanctions?
Just if you heard me earlier, Ivan, I did say that for all this work that we expect ECG to do, that they have not been able to do. And so from the minister's own statement, we get the indication that he has the full backing of the minister not to churn out the timetable. So we don't expect any timetable.
And
Ghanaians must not expect any timetable.
You're confident if that's the case, that the PURC can crack the whip?
Of course. Of course.
But it will make the difference? Even if they do?
How much are they going to charge them for if they don't comply? The penalty is a peanut. And so I'm sure they will be willing to pay the penalty than to churn out the information. Unless a Ghanaian chooses one day, or the Consumer Protection Agency, support Ghanaians to demand what's our right.
Thank you very much. And that's Nana Moesi, is Executive Director of the Institute for Energy Security, IES, LA Head John Jinapo, who is a ranking member on the Mines and Energy Committee in Parliament, and the MP for Yape Kosogu. What's your own take on this? And I know many of you have been asking for that load management timetable. The PURC has demanded it, and the ECG has close-up day Wednesday, 48 hours to comply or face sanctions. I want to hear from you. 055-11-11997, News 90 in a minute.